I'm Carrie Furness, and am here at the Southeast Climate Science Center, which is based at NC State University. So I'm actually an NC State employee working in the Climate Science Center. Was hoping that I think that we could make this less of a presentation and more of a dialogue. So was going to actually run this, not as a presentation, but within PowerPoint so we can see those notes sections and really just run through the presentation that you all should have already received previously. So if we can, just to make sure I can also, you can all can mute or unmute yourself successfully. If we could go around and just introduce who's on the line so we can, I can make sure am tracking that, because in some cases, a name is not associated with a caller or a participant. So maybe alphabetical if, or just call out who you are.
Hi, folks. This is Mallory Martin. I'm the coordinator for the South Atlantic LCC. I'm in Raleigh also, and glad to be on the call. Thanks for having me.
Right. Welcome.
Hi, this is Ben Kaler, Science Coordinator for the Gulf Coast Prairie LCC in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Gulf Coast Prairie. Okay, great.
This is Greg Watson. I'm Coordinator for the Gulf Coastal Plains and Ozarks LCC. Carrie, and I don't know our science coordinator, Todd Jones, Farron's going to be on or not. He's aware of it, so he may jump in later.
Okay. All right, great. I see another call-in that's not identified. That may be Aranda Zoo that hasn't broken the connection, but is there someone else on the line? Or unsuccessfully? Okay, so that's the call-in user. I don't have a name associated with that, but we'll hear from them. So, okay, so just in the interest of time, we'll go ahead and get started, and it may be that we finish in well under an hour. But again, I was hoping to make this a dialogue because I'm looking for feedback. So, but I did want to run through this presentation, and I've got some live links that we can visit if that is helpful in talking through some of the features of this global change monitoring portal. And so just as a background, we sort of started this project at some small level, actually probably a couple of years ago, and have worked on it with varying degrees of effort there. And it sort of emerged from early in the Climate Science Center days as they were developing the science plan and talking about how do we make some of these landscape scale conservation decisions, trying to get a bead on who's measuring what where and what data might be available to answer some of the land management and science questions that were going to become relevant or being planned. So anyway, this just a nod to the folks who have been involved in this project. Jerry McMahon, obviously our federal director, and Damian Shea was former university director at the Southeast Climate Science Center. Ryan Boyles is now that is in that role here as our university director, and Barrett Goldfarb is on the faculty in Forestry and Environmental Resources, which is the department that I'm in. So moving along here. So again, what the purpose of this is just to sort of familiarize you with some of the features and the functions that we've incorporated in this Southeast Global Change Monitoring Portal. And we did do sort of a user needs evaluation, if you will, as we were initially planning this, and developed a small pilot of about 10 programs. And as we worked on developing the database and got some feedback from folks at that time. So now we're at the phase where we've incorporated, we think we have a broad range of some of the monitoring that's done in the Southeast, and we've developed some capacities in this database and recognized that could also do a lot more with it or not. And so trying to make those decisions, we really want to try to get some feedback from folks about whether this is a tool that has enough utility to consider additional development or at least continuing curation, I guess. So there would be several options that I think take with this at the end of this phase. So really trying to get a read on feedback from users who might be using this. So jumping right in. Some MIT. So this, well, and you all got this PowerPoint. Is that correct? So I wanted to. Unfortunately, I can't show my big screen, so this is going to be a little bit smaller than I hoped. But so I'm going to. So I sort of designed this PowerPoint to sort of say, here are some of the features of this, and this is why we incorporated those. So feel free along the way to ask questions or throw out comments, though I do hope that even if you provide comments here, if you would be willing to fill out that evaluation sheet, that just that Excel template or Excel spreadsheet we sent out to sort of try to get some specific feedback in a more formalized way would be helpful. So, so this is the homepage, and obviously the homepage is to orient you to the portal and hopefully show you where to go, what you might find here, and how to get there, I guess. So this is just general information about a general description of the database and how it's structured a bit. How it can be modified or added to, especially if someone who is representative from a monitoring program or has knowledge of a program comes in, and then this is our main navigation, and then I guess I'll just sort of maybe I hesitate to, just because the map server appears to be having a hard time loading sites, so I'm going to probably I try to set some things up in advance, and hopefully that will work. But anyway, so you can see that this is which is just a static map. I mean, it's not. It's just a link to jump into the just into the map page. So if you like that visual and you want to sort of see, okay, what's this thing about, you can jump straight to that main map page. And so if we then go to the main map page, this is sort of so some of the map functionality, and this is in play across the whole website. So if you come to any page that has a map, this functionality, some of the basic functionality goes along with that. So and that is, we use an Esri base map, so there's some familiarity, although I know some folks may prefer Google. But anyway, and so that allows you to switch your base map if you prefer a different base map to view. And those are standard Esri products. And then also this legend box, and I can show you that here, which might be. So this gives you an idea also of. I'm going to have trouble since I rendered these on my larger monitor. Not going to fit that well. So this is that main map page, and in this case, this is the default, which is just the Esri. I think it's whatever in the world it's called, the streets base map. So you can change that to all of their products here, and then this also shows you what the boundary, what region we have carved out, and as you may or may not know, the CSE boundaries are kind of fuzzy. So I think that our official one just goes something like this. So we use the LCC boundaries to define the region, and you can see here we have all of Gulf Coast Prairie, coastal plains, and Ozarks, Peninsular Florida. What do we have? Southern Appalachian, and then we and Caribbean. We do include the Caribbean, and we did truncate the Appalachian just because when you go up to Maine, it doesn't seem like a southeast region. region anymore. So the sampling sites, you can at this, and this is really just for data discovery, you know, just sort of to get your bearings, not really to acquire data or do searches or whatever. So this is really just a data discovery tool, this main map page. But we did develop the functionality so that you could, on this map, overlay some of the footprints of the monitoring program. So you see here, this is just a scrollable list of all the monitoring programs, and as the database is populated, it automatically adds, you know, to this list, because we necessarily have to use acronyms, even though sometimes they're contrived, I guess, for lack of a better word, as opposed to something like Army, which is, you know, a real defined acronym. In some cases, we just had to shorten them in order to be more manageable. So in this case, you can see those. You can get at a glance what that acronym means with the mouse over, and also see how many sites you would find in this database. You can click on all programs to overlay all of them on there. That's not a very effective thing to do, because it just fills the whole map. But it does give you at a glance a way to lay on different programs and get a sense of what their footprint is, where they work. You can also, with this sort of standard map functionality, see that the sampling sites are mapped in by the media type in which the measurements are made. So air, land, and water, and there's also the orange is actually a multiple media. So those, in that case, these are both air and water media measurements are made in this case, I believe. So, and then you can also overlay different types of geographic boundaries. So I think this shows, and this also was, not quite sure why it's thinking it's loading, but this just shows that making some of those changes. And in this case, we've changed the base map, the Azure base map, to the imagery with labels, and the same programs are displayed. And also, as I had shown, another functionality, which was up before I clicked away, is that if there is a point on the map, you can, if you click on it, it gives you a pop-up, so that if you're kind of a visual learner, as I am, if you click on a map point, it comes up with an open box that allows you to provide the link, so you can tell what program that point is associated with. So you can, and a link to that program page, and then also a link to that site page. So so that, and again, these are, the data discovery functions that we hope would allow people to sort of investigate, what some of these data resources are, and whether they might be relevant to at least the geographic area that is of interest. So some of the things that we're hoping to get feedback is, the appropriateness, what's the usefulness of these geographic classifications in general. We chose, we obviously have our region boundary, but we also have an ecoregion classification, the LCC classification, and then the HUC 8 classification. And these geographic criteria are important, in part because that then forms the basis for the searches. And so you can search for things within those geographic criteria. So we chose those, assuming that those were the types of the level of granularity that we could both support in the database, and then also were of interest to LCC and other users. So be interested in that feedback, and this whole display, some of these display features. So maybe I should ask if there are any questions at this stage. And again, feel free to pipe in, but if you have some specific questions about any of this functionality, be happy to try to walk through any more of that. Oh, all right, we'll move along. So so next, just some and in the navigation, this is one of our main navigation tools and or navigation categories. And what this shows is this is just a dictionaries basically of relevant information in the portal. And I think the most important one of this is this dictionary of terms, because as you'll see, we'll show a little more the classification we use, and when we have a monitoring program, we incorporate detail, but we also classify it against in a scheme based on the type of media, the type of measurement, physical, chemical, biological, and then also some sort of general parameter types. But those, by necessity, are somewhat broad as kind of an upper level classification. So, in order to make it possible to do effective searches that don't, that the database could actually manage it. So, in that case, we just define any of, and in some cases give examples if there's basically an other category, so that you might be able to tell what that would inform a search too. So I'll talk a little more about that a little bit later. But that's so hopefully this is a good resource for how we defined things basically, and where we got some of the and some general information about, for a user who's not familiar with, say, LCCs, what those are and how they might get more information about those. So, and then the other aspect of the dictionary's navigation is just a table, a sortable table of HUC names and codes, since I think people, and in fact, that's actually relevant because Esri, in Esri maps, those are rendered using the HUC name, which I think may be familiar to a lot of folks, but the searches utilize the HUC codes. So this is a way to sort of make that connection if you don't already, have it, I guess, in your framework. So so moving along, the next sort of aspect of data discovery is just the Browse Programs page. And so this is a means to get, and this again, it's a browsable list of everything in the database. So it's really not an efficient way to search for something, but it's actually a good way to sort of get a read maybe on some the types of media, what some of the sponsoring organizations are, and so this has this is a list of all of the programs, and then some limited metadata, just some things that we thought should be out front, so you can get an idea of what their footprint is, of where they sample, what their when the program started, and each of these columns are just sortable on the display, I guess. So and you get an idea of when they actually started collecting data, and when they ended, if the program has is not currently active. So this again is just sort of data discovery. One function is that if you for instance, have know a program that you want to jump to as opposed to scrolling, and you're familiar enough with it, you can just plug it in, and that string search will lead you to sort of a shortcut, so you don't have to do the scrolling if you don't need to. So let's see what other aspects of this. Oh, so I guess I would point out, and this is a function of the database, since I mentioned it there, is, why are you not? No, let me just, I'm having some real connectivity issues here. This shows you, I guess, that, boy, did I, there we go. We just need to resort. So this gives you an indication, because of the way the database was originally structured, and is if a program makes measurements in more than one media type and also in more than one measurement type, just in order to make the searches effective, those are just broken into partitions, so that and that's really for search capability. So I would just point that out, so that some cases the program is, again, it's just split for that purpose. Yeah, okay. So again, to go into, and I guess I'll go back to here, although I'm unnecessary. So if we go to a specific, from this Browse Programs page, you can click on a particular program, and that takes you to a program page. And this is the full metadata that we have for that program. So it, this gives you a fuller description. So what's shown in the Browse Programs is this, management, purposes sampling sort of phrases. And so this is a fuller description of the program. And in addition, as a supplement, I guess, because we have developed this by necessity, or relatively broad classification, we also use this description box, which is open vocabulary, to incorporate some detail of the actual measurements that are made, so that for instance, you search on something, water, something in water and nutrients, you would be able to actually see what type of measurements are actually made. Or if you just do another chemical, this gives you more detail than you can. And so this is helpful in trying to determine if this data resource is one that would be relevant to the specific question you're asking. So this shows you if it's active currently, and then when it started, and in some cases this is actually last measurement. Or it's currently active and still measuring. This is a total number of sites in the program, and this may be estimated if that's all the information we have. But in some cases, these numbers might be different because they have sites outside of the footprint that we've chosen, or some of these sites that we actually have site information for. There are multiple collection areas, and we just have a single point representation of that. But in all cases, there's a point of contact so that you could go further to get further information as necessary, and in most cases a URL for additional information about the program, and then also a data access URL. And if the data aren't available online or through some data warehouse, then there's fallback to at least have a point of contact. And then this shows who sponsors it, and then how frequently they make samples or make data collections, and then sort of a general footprint. Part of the program page is also then this rendering of where their sites are actually located for that site, and then when the last revision of this information, of this page in particular was, and that can be because it was just entered, or because there was actually just a change in correction or whatever. But that gives you an idea of how recent this information was. Part of this functionality on here too is you have this visual representation by the map of the sites, and then again all the functionality that comes with that. So you can scroll or drill down closer, pan out to a larger footprint, and then overlay some of these boundaries as well. And also, and so this is the pop-up. So this just shows you a quick cut at what some of the geographic classifications are, and then you can jump straight to that site page if you like, or jump back to the program. So if you click the show list page, this gives you a whole list of what all of the sites that we have information for in the database associated with that program. So and then this, and again, this is a limited metadata. Here is on just a page display, but you can download that in the whole site list and into CSV or Excel, and in fact that's actually the information of these are done by a batch upload. So we haven't incorporated I guess crowd sourcing of this at this point, though that would be a possibility to do. So yeah, so that's the full metadata for a program, and then this again is the full site list. From this site list or from some of the site pop-ups, you can also go to the metadata page for a site, and this shows you information about this particular site, and you can jump back to the monitoring program page. This shows you what the coordinates are for the site, and then some indication of what this point representation is in relation to where those measurements might actually be made. And this is related in part to, so I'll just jump back to the dictionary page, which is where these are described. So we developed this proximity descriptor in order to allow, hopefully for monitoring programs to be, to provide information about location, at the level of accuracy that they're comfortable with, I guess. And you may know that large programs like forest inventory and analysis, the lat longs are deliberately offset for proprietary reasons. In some cases, we just don't have the information at a level of resolution, and our thinking is to provide as much information as possible so that someone, in considering that as maybe relevant information, could then take the next step to contact and find and try to actually get more detailed information as necessary. But yeah, and so that's and in fact proximity. Well, so like in the case of say for instance Fish and Wildlife Service I&M data, which we have pulled in. In that case, those are in many cases some of those survey data are available only pinned to the refuge itself. So we have a centroid of the refuge, and that's what that point representation indicates. So this, and also on the site page you can see when that last what the period of record is, and so with a timestamp of when that information was collected. So you can also see what types of measurements are made at that particular site, and in some cases, the information we have indicates that it's that they may not make all of the same measurements at individual sites across a monitoring program, and so that can be portrayed here if we have that information. All right. Yeah. And sometimes, because of the coloration, you can switch up those base maps to get a better idea of, or get a better representation of it. But the point's always in the middle, which is helpful to find it if the map is is kind of smearing it a little bit. So, okay, so jump into search function, and we sort of imagine that this was where, the real power, if you will, of the database resides, because this is where a user could really try to drill down to what types of data resources might be relevant to the question, or the land management question, the science question, whatever, what my specific interests are. And so showing the search, I don't know, actually did the search. So, so from the search page, which again is in the main navigation, so you can jump straight to that if that's your desire, is so this is a mechanism that by which you can search by different types of geography. In this case, actually, I did different types of geography. So we formulated a search for the South Atlantic if you don't really care about things that are outside your region, in which you can do, and again, the search functionality is such that these are ors and within boxes, and these are ands between boxes. So, and in the same way, you pull in you can also do a search also by measurement at the same time or instead. And so in this case, this is looking for all biological measurements in Georgia and North Carolina that are in the South Atlantic LCC. So from this box, you can search the programs, or you can choose to go ahead and search by sites there. And the results display in on the same page, so that you can always go back to say, oh, what did I search on, and what what is this telling me? So, and then you can change your search along the way. You can say, oh, I didn't mean to do biological, I really meant physical ones, or I only care about biological measurements that are made in water. I don't really care about land measurements. So you can reformulate your search iteratively here, and then, or clear it and start over. And in this case, I guess this is actually, I think I tried to do the same search so that so in this case, you come up with 50 sites or 50 programs, and at 3,500 sites that make biological measurements, where biological measurements are made in these two states that are also in the South Atlantic region. So, so you both come up with a program list, which you may, in looking through those, be able to rule out or specific data resources, and then you also can get the site list. So you can see that these range from some of the Fish and Wildlife Service survey data, and this necessarily populates with, and that page map won't render probably quickly enough, but and because we didn't specify media, we also have wild fish health survey data. So this brings up the whole suite of sites that fall within that geographic footprint and those measurement types. So moving on. So I guess it's just sort of revisiting the evaluation sheet. We really want to sort of know what, the relevance, how does this have functionality that's relevant to the way that you would like to interact with this information? Are there some obvious things that you would prefer to have, or that are not necessary, or whatever? And that's a feature that was really not necessary in the way that I would try to interact with this. So those would be the type of things. And is this the right? Is this metadata the type of metadata that's relevant? Are these the type of information that you want to try to get at? Is there a way to get to it more efficiently, et cetera? Is the map interface good? So those are the kinds of feedback we're looking for here. And I guess in this case, you can also toggle back and forth to to the program as well. So from this search page, you can then also download these search results. And again, I think that this is where some of the power of this, I think this is the right one, but at any rate. And so you come up with actually a CSV, or in this case, I've downloaded an Excel file of, these 3,500 sites that you can then filter, search, pull into the data analysis, some other sort of data analysis software. But these would be the places where you might find data that you might have an interest in. So that's so again, some of the display stuff is good to visualize here, but I think if you really want to work with the data, that's where the being able to download it and use it elsewhere, I think, is the functionality we were going for. So just quickly, so there's another couple of examples of searches that you might want to formulate. And so this is just a simple, who's measuring surface elevation in Peninsular Florida. And so in this case, search within this LCC and these measurement types, and we come up with, I think there were actually 26. There was a couple of programs added since that PowerPoint was presented or was put together, and so and there's 86 sites right now in the database in Peninsular Florida where surface elevation table measurements are being made from some USGS sites here, just from some Park Service sites, some Fish and Wildlife sites. So that's another, and so this is a USGS program that is working in the Everglades. Let's see. Yeah, okay. And so then just a final example of a search, and this is actually one that we actually had a graduate student use this for, because in working with a group from East Urbana, Cherokee, who has a big fisheries program in some of their lands, they were hoping to try to make some connections between some more easily available air temperature measurements and some stream measurements, because they're having some problems with, especially riparian buffers, exposing sort of, I guess, accelerating, I guess, the temperature increases in their streams and affecting some of their fisheries work. So they're trying to put together some information about, I guess, about some of those correlations. So, so in this case, she, did a search, and actually in the end we ended up bringing it down to actually Huck level, but starting with the Blue Ridge and just pulling up programs and sites where measurements are made in air or water, and in this case are physical measurements, and hydrologic and meteorologic. So this came up with 26 potential programs that are making those types of measurements, and I think in this case she came up with, I'm not sure, 24, how many sites. One thing that I would point out is in this case, okay, so 2,800 sites in this map. The map server is struggling today for some reason. I don't know what's going on with Esri, but and so this pulls up things, from Clean Air Status and Trends Network, which we know make air temperature measurements, to some of the National Fish Habitat Partnership data, and then some other smaller ones. So we do have some tribal information in here, and we are happy to include information from all types of organizations, as they're relevant to these, in some of these different categories. So, and I guess one thing that I would say is, in the case of some programs, there is not currently specific site level information. And in some cases there may never be, because the data just may not be available. And we still think there's relevance to including that program information, because in some cases if you contact, the program rep, you could probably get the site level information, but it's not publicly available, or at least the locations are not publicly available. So in that case, we, because we are using point representations of all of these monitoring stations, we then map that with the state centroid of if they have activity in that state, with the idea that would still give a user information that might be a data resource that they would want to investigate further, to track down to see if the data are relevant to the geographic footprint that may be more specific than the whole state. But then hopefully it would still connect them or give them enough information about the proximity of that they could decide if it was worth trying to acquire. So, and I think that I made the point early, if not, I should have, I guess. So this is not a data portal, it's a metadata portal. So we considered that at the very outset, maybe we would pull in data, but we gave that idea up in about 24 hours, I think. So the idea is that we're connecting people to data resources, and then the user can take that next step to acquire the data if it's relevant. So I guess then I would say that, so in summary, we're really trying to see what your needs are, I guess, and then decide what to do next. So we could just stop where we are at this phase, wrap it up, and, package it, and then let it just go live, in Databasin or onto some other host, some other platform. And that's, one viable option. We could continue updating it. I think we have our arms around a lot of what's happening in the Southeast, but I have a working spreadsheet of hundreds, several, actually at least 200 more that we could put in. Even if we don't go further with anything else, and we could just continue to populate the database with information that we already have. We could continue to expand, it in its current configuration, just pull in more observational networks. I know there's more out there. And then we started this with the idea that it was going to be a snapshot, that we weren't going to incorporate things like web services, and we would just try to get our arms around what was out there, and then maybe do another update, after another period of time. But recognizing, of course, that any snapshot is out of date by the time you finish taking it. So anyway, so that's, there are many ways I think we could go with this. And then there's also, I have a running list of things that would, if there were money and time and need, I guess, to do some additional, incorporate additional capabilities, partner with other folks. And I think that's the ideal, is to partner with some other efforts to make it more usable to more people, I guess, and to take the load off of the aspects of that development. So, but even within the current capabilities, there would be some things we could do to, to I think incorporate efficiencies and operationalize some aspects of it. But and potentially expand it to other regions. So we started in the Southeast, but they're, CSCs and LCCs obviously are national in scale. So we could potentially expand if there was desire. So so I just encourage feedback that would help us guide that. There's, some specific questions in that evaluation spreadsheet about actual current capability, but then also some sort of wider ranging questions, about how you might use it, or how, what are gaps, et cetera, and what kind of next steps you might recommend. So